30 years, I didn't travel. I didn't get on an airplane and go to wonderful places. And I thought, this is total BS. I'm 50 years old and I don't travel. And it's one of my favorite things to do. Something has to change. And so that was the beginning of the end of my relationship. Welcome, everybody, to Confessions of a Binge Eater, formerly the Heal Your Hunger Show. And this is really exciting. Episode 550, we're changing the name, same real and raw content. I really think this name is very apt because, as you know, if you've been listening, I bring my own personal experience to the conversation about emotional eating. I bring my own embarrassing experience from time to time, including today's show. And it's just a show where I'm real and raw. And probably the best compliment I could get, and that I do get from time to time, is that I am real. And from a past of feeling like I wasn't good enough and I had to be somebody else, that's an incredible compliment and really testament to my own journey of healing from emotional eating. So welcome back to the show. If you're here for the first time, yes, this is a show about emotional eating, binge eating, food addiction, all kinds of aberrant behavior around food and weight loss and failed attempts at weight loss and the whole nine. And I'm glad you're here. And what you can count on me for is to be truthful about my experience and about my experience of 30 plus years of helping emotional eaters, helping people heal the underlying causes of what drives them to binge eat. So welcome. Let's do this. Today's show is about the 10 things you don't know about me. I did a show like this many years ago, actually about 5 years ago. And it was right around the time that I started dating my partner. And it was kind of funny because he went straight to my podcast and listened to that. And I thought, what a smart guy. Like, if you're starting to date somebody or you've been on a few dates, listen to their podcast that says 10 things you don't know about me, because you'll learn something. I don't think any of the other guys I was dating around that time, before I met him, thought to do that. So that's a plus for him right there. Anyway, he learned a lot about me. But this show with the same topic, 10 things you don't know about me, obviously I'm bringing different things to you, a little more real and raw. And these are all things he already knows at this point. I don't think this is a show I would have wanted him to hear right off the bat after just a couple dates. But okay, here we go. Now, these are things that are personal. They're not particularly salacious. There's a few in there that are a little cringy for me to share. I'll share towards the end more about my specifics of my binge eating, a few confessions around my binge eating. But I do want you to know me. So the first thing, I was married for several years to a man who used to be my guru, and I say guru kind of in air quotes. He was the person who helped me heal. His name was Tricia Nelson, and after 20 years of being together, we got married. And he was somebody that didn't like to travel. He was somebody that had struggled with claustrophobia, and he wasn't a big fan of getting on an airplane and being on an airplane for several hours at a time. It just made him feel panicky. He would do it when push came to shove, but he didn't do it without a really good reason. And this was a problem for me. And I share this because it is part of my journey. I was in a relationship with somebody who was my soulmate, because we both shared a background of having been emotional eaters and then an experience of overcoming emotional eating. He's the one who helped me heal, and so you'll hear me reference him on my show from time to time. But we probably shouldn't have been married because we weren't well suited as marriage partners. The travel issue being one of the big ones in ways that we were incompatible. So he didn't want to travel. He didn't like to travel. And for 30 years, I didn't travel. Meaning get on an airplane and go to wonderful places. I would from time to time go visit my family, but that's about it. And to be honest, the beginning of the end of my marriage happened when I woke up to the fact that, oh my God, for 30 years, I haven't been traveling and I love to travel. Have you ever been in a relationship where all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why am I doing this? Why am I living this way? This is not who I am. Well, that happened to me. And I thought, this is total BS. I'm 50 years old and I don't travel. And it's one of my favorite things to do. Something has to change. And so that was the beginning of the end of my relationship. The next thing I'm going to share with you is that I believe it was 2019, I did leave that relationship. And I often reference having, divorced my husband. But the truth is, we didn't legally divorce. We stayed married up until the day he died. So I'm technically a widow, okay? And that's kind of a long story of why we didn't divorce. We separated and started different lives. Not entirely. We were friends and stayed in contact up until the day he died. I actually am the one who found him, sadly dead. And that was a horrible experience. So we were very close to the point where I went into his apartment just a couple hours after he passed away. And I was going to go help him with his computer. We lived literally in the same building. I lived in the unit above him. So that's how close we were up until the end. But we never actually divorced. It was kind of complicated. Money was mixed up and we both owned these two apartments. We lived separately for several years before we separated. Some of his anxiety returned towards the end of his life. And it really brought him a lot of unrest, the idea of our actually divorcing. It made him very upset and scared. And I just thought, okay, fine. We'll stay married, but we're basically divorced. We act divorced in that I started dating. I found a life partner. He didn't feel the need to do that for himself. But we stayed legally married because it brought him a sense of calm and ease. And my new partner, I wouldn't have stayed married if my new partner had an objection to that, a strong objection. But, he's not a real conventional guy. And he's like, that's okay. So long as you're with me, so long as you go to bed at night with me, that's fine. So that's how that played out. The third thing I want to share with you is maybe something you can relate to, and that's that I always thought I was fat. And yet I look back at pictures of myself at different parts of my life, and I wasn't fat. I look back and see that it was between my ears. And if you've read my book, Heal Your Hunger, you know that I refer to that as fat head. There's a more clinical term called body dysmorphia. I like to call it fat head because you just can't tell that if you're not that fat or not fat at all. You often can think that you're fat. And it works both ways, where you can think you're thinner than you are. Have you ever seen a picture of yourself and thought, oh my God, I didn't realize I was that big? Well, I did that too. So it works both ways. It cuts both ways. But the point is, I look back at photos of myself and I see a sweet person who was tortured by fathead, believing she was fat when many times she wasn't. And it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I was fat in between my ears, but I wasn't always fat literally or even overweight. But you think you're fat long enough, what happens? Yeah, you become so. The fourth thing I want to share with you is that I haven't had a drink in 37 years. So early on as a teenager, when I would drink, with friends in the woods, we would, have some parents' alcohol and we'd start drinking, I would black out, meaning I would completely lose the night. I would lose memory of what happened. And I'd go running around the woods or doing crazy things, including being promiscuous when I was drunk. and I would get drunk, and it was hard for me not to overdrink when I started drinking. So I had crazy behavior, and then I would forget the whole thing. So that's what blacking out is. The next day, I'd have to have people tell me what I did, literally tell me what I did and who I did it with, which could be super, super embarrassing because I would end up literally fooling around with people that I may not have been caught dead with when I was not drinking. So on account of that craziness and my strong allergy to alcohol, which I do believe now is similar to my strong allergy to sugar, when I start eating sugar, sugar's all I want to eat, and I go overboard on sugar. I consider myself a sugar addict, but it's the same, literally the same physiological reaction to sugar that plays out when I was drinking, because alcohol is the most refined form of sugar there is. So it makes sense that if I'm allergic to sugar, I'm allergic to alcohol as well, meaning I don't have a stop button. So yeah, at age 21, I had my last drink, and I haven't had a drink since, and I consider myself an alcoholic because I can't control my drinking. I drink more than I intend to, and I just stopped, and I'm very grateful for that. That's certainly helped in terms of wrinkles on my face because sugar and alcohol will destroy the elasticity in our skin, and one of the great reasons why you want to be sugar-free, but maybe alcohol-free as well. So for 37 years, I haven't had a drink. I've been super happy with that decision. I love my life, and I never have a hangover. Or I had sugar hangovers after I stopped drinking, for sure, but not alcohol hangovers. Number 5, I used to default to the feeling of hate when I was uncomfortable. So I had an experience when I was young of sexual abuse, and my experience with that is that with this person who I was in this wrong relationship with, and I call that a relationship because if for 5 years you're in a sexually abusive relationship, it's a relationship nonetheless. In order to feel like I was protecting myself, in order to feel less vulnerable, I would hate the person I was doing these sexual things with. I would hate them. And that feeling of hate inside felt like a shield. It felt like protection. And so I would hate this person, and I would constantly hate this person. And it made me feel stronger. It made me feel stronger. Hate is a strong emotion. And the problem with that is that even long past that relationship being over, the habit of hating stuck to me. Whenever I was uncomfortable, I would default to a feeling of hate. So I would hate my friends. I would hate my family members. Anytime I was uncomfortable, I would have an angry feeling, an angry, hateful feeling. So on my recovery journey, I had to change that. Like, I didn't want to keep hating anybody. It would fuel my overeating. Having hate in my heart would snuff out feelings of love. And my experience is you can't heal from emotional eating if you don't have love in your heart. If you have hate in your heart, you're going to feel guilty. If you feel guilty, it will fuel emotional eating. So I had to heal that with God's grace. God healed me of that, but I had to address it for sure, because that's not a good default to have throughout your life every time you feel uncomfortable. Number 6, I don't own a scale, and I don't weigh myself, and I haven't weighed myself for decades. And when I go to the doctor's office, I turn around and I say, please don't tell me my weight. So I'm really committed to not letting the scale make me crazy. And I suggest this to my clients as well. If you give the scale the power to make you feel good, where it tells you a number you're all excited about, guess what? You also give it the power to make you feel bad. Because what if it tells you a number you are not excited about? Well, what happens then? Well, we either use it as an excuse to eat, like, what's the point? I've been doing all this exercise or all this dieting and still haven't lost any weight. So we use it as an excuse to eat. And if it tells us something we're happy about, it gives us wiggle room to eat as well, right? So either way, it's a trap, and I sidestep the trap by not weighing myself. and I learned this by bitter experience, because every time I would weigh myself, I'd end up gaining weight. It would get the best of me. Number 7, there was a time in my life where I had to cover up my mirrors to stop my obsessive checking out my ass in the mirror. When I gain weight, it goes to my ass. Okay, so when I gain weight, I gain it in my butt. I gain it in my stomach too. But at one point, I got so obsessive with checking out my ass in the mirror. I mean, I know many people do this, and you may do this as well. It's very common. I mean, if you go to a public women's restroom, you see women checking out their ass in the mirror. We often do it. It's a habit. You don't have to be an emotional eater to want to see what your butt looks like. But I did it so obsessively. And I couldn't stop. I covered up my mirrors. That's how desperate I felt to stop. And another confession on the same point is sometimes now, when I want to know what my butt looks like, or if I have body dysmorphia and I think I've gained weight, and I don't weigh myself, so I don't really know, I will take a picture of myself, a selfie in the mirror, and take a picture of my butt. That is very cringy to share with you. I'm kind of embarrassed about that. So once in a while, when I'm feeling like not in control of my weight, not because I'm overeating, but I just feel like I know I've gained weight and I can't tell, I'll take a picture of my ass. And then I'll look at it, and then it'll kind of be a reality check for me. That's very embarrassing to admit. I'm not obsessive about it anymore, but I do check once in a while. Number 8, because I was involved in a sexual relationship when I was 5, for about 5 years, I became very sexual early on at age 5, and I started masturbating. Actually, that was the first way that I had a sexual encounter with somebody who sexually abused me, as I was taught, this person taught me how to masturbate. So at age 5, I was masturbating, and when you're sexual at an inappropriate age, it can become a sexual obsession. It can become obsessive and a compulsive habit, and it did for me. And so I learned how to masturbate when I was 5. And from that point on, when I was uncomfortable, meaning I didn't want to feel my feelings, when I was lonely, when I was empty, I would compulsively masturbate. Like I'd have an orgasm about 5 times or something like that. And I was so ashamed of this behavior. I mean, I was 5. I was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I mean, I did this up into, high school and college. But I was so ashamed of that behavior. I never talked to anybody about it. I never checked it out. Do you masturbate? It wasn't until I was in a course on feminism in college that I realized that other people masturbate. And then I realized they masturbate in a different way. I was masturbating. Maybe that's another show. But anyway, it liberated me to be in that class, to realize I wasn't the only one, because I beat myself up so much for my shameful and secretive habit of compulsively masturbating. So if you have that habit, if you feel ashamed of it, please stop beating yourself up about it. It's another painkiller. It's another way that we escape our feelings. Eating is one way, but I also masturbated as well. So number 9, I could eat up to 3,000 calories in a binge, even 4,000 calories. And I would feel so completely stuffed and sick. But it was amazing to me that I could pack away so much food. And now, I eat a good healthy salad and I'm completely full. So 3,000 to 4,000 calories in a binge. Because once I started, I couldn't stop. And if you've watched my TEDx talk, you know about my garbage eating. That would have been one of my things you don't know about me. Yeah, I would eat until I couldn't eat anymore, and I wasn't a puker, so I tried. God knows I tried to vomit, but I couldn't do it. Thank God I was not successful at being bulimic. But I would eat as much as I could, and then I'd feel so sick, I'd throw the remains in the garbage, and after passing out on the couch or sleeping or whatever, I would remember there were perfectly good cookies in the trash, and I would go retrieve them. I actually reenact that in my TEDx talk called Emotional Eating. What if weight loss isn't about the food? Check it out. So anyway, 3,000 to 4,000 calories. And number 10, my top favorite binge foods. I thought I would share that with you. Popcorn for sure. I would make popcorn all the time, or I would buy popcorn, like movie theater popcorn. So I would buy popcorn in a bag once it got really good. You could buy really good popcorn, or I would make it and put butter on it, sometimes some tamari sauce. I also loved ice cream, of course. You know, that 3,000 to 4,000 calories happened because I would eat like 2 pints of ice cream at 1,000 calories a pint. I would eat chocolate chip cookies. I always had salty with the sweet, so there was always chips and then the sweet. I loved Twix bars. I love sweet and crunchy and salty. So the flavor of ice cream I would love is like praline pecan or salted caramel, that kind of thing. It's kind of cringy to talk about this. I was a binge eater. And you eat a whole bag of popcorn, you know, you're looking at 1,000 calories right there. So a couple pints of ice cream, a package of soft, chewy chocolate chip cookies, some candy bars, and cereal, of course. I loved cereal with milk. Oh my goodness. Anyway, I ate so many things, friends. I ate so many different things when I was binging. I'm just giving you the highlights. And I hope I'm not making you hungry. Anyway, these are the 10 things you now know about me. And I promise I'll bring you more confessions of a binge eater, but not just about my binging, but also about my life. My experience is I didn't have an eating problem as much as I had a living problem. So what this show is really about is solutions to my living problem, you know, and as an emotional eater, because as emotional eaters, my experience is we have very common feelings and thoughts and reactions to life. And that's where the real healing is, when we start to face and heal the way we react to life. So more of that coming your way. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please like this show. Please share this show with others. And please come back. I love you, and I'll see you in the next show. If you're ready to get off the dieting roller coaster ride and finally make peace with food and with your body, talk to a Heal Your Hunger mentor about what steps you need to take based on your own history with food and weight. Go to healyourhunger.com and register for an emotional eating breakthrough session and see how fast you can experience real change. It's a complimentary evaluation, but there are limited spots available. So go to healyourhunger.com and register to speak with a mentor today.